Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Now the Wire podcast, a dedicated Warrington Wolves show. I'm Stephen, and today, once again, I'm joined with.
I'm Carl, and thanks for joining second episode. This week we are going to be discussing the previous Huddersfield and Castleford games. We've got a special guest interview coming up. We'll be previewing the Salford game in the coming week, looking at the rest of the Super League fixtures, taking a quick look at the table, and then we'll finish it off with another brain teaser question.
Indeed.
So, Stephen, let's talk about Huddersfield first off.
I think we should, mate. So, reflecting back on the Huddersfield game, in the first episode, we both predicted a win, but unfortunately, it
Yeah,
wasn't meant to be. First game back for the fans, and to put it straight, Huddersfield just dominated us. Players
I
were
think it was a
out of. Sorry, go on. Go on.
go on. Go and finish.
Yeah, I was going to say players were out of position in the lineup, and their team just didn't look up to scratch, if I'm being honest. Although second half fight back to the wire did close the gap to just a converted try, I believe, in the end. Huddersfield came out victors on the day, and Warrington fans left the HJ without a smile on their faces. Although it was great to watch the team back at the Halliwell Jones for the first time in a very long time. Carl, you were at the game. Give us an overview from what you saw at the HJ against the Giants.
Yeah, I think what I was going to say before, sorry for cutting you up there, was
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it was a game of two halves.
it was.
I think the first half was as disappointing as the Cas game at the beginning of the season when,
Yeah,
we felt a little bit deflated. A second half rally, and let's say some people switched back into positions that they felt comfortable with.
hmm
You noticed an instant difference to it.
yeah,
And as you said, I think we just fell up short, 26-20, on the wrong side of that.
yeah,
Obviously, a lot of people I spoke to were disappointed with the result, but they were more than happy to be back.
yeah, yeah.
But I think it was certainly a game where it was a bit of a missed opportunity, really.
Yeah, I think so too, mate. And like you did say, in the second half, players went back into their comfortable positions, and Warrington got into the swing of things again. Obviously, the news that Greg Inglis is injured, and we'll speak about the Cass game in a minute. Where does Greg Inglis fit into this side? Because in my opinion, the positions he's most comfortable in, I think we're covered in those areas. So where do you think he fits in this squad?
Well, he's not fit enough to be a fullback at
No.
the moment. There's no way he's fit enough. And for me, I don't understand why you'd want to move Stefan from that position anyway, where he's he's one of the top five fullbacks, if not
Yeah,
the top
easy,
three
easy.
fullbacks in the competition for what he brings. And again, we'll talk about the Cas game in a bit.
hmm
But he's not fit enough for a fullback,
He's not.
um, for me at the moment. Whether that'll change again, do you then have to restructure the whole team around? We've brought him in to the club.
Mm.
I just hope that we're just not going to basically um, find a place for him and it ends up disrupting a lot of
Yeah,
other
yeah,
players around. Um, the other position where you'd probably see him most likely is centre.
yeah,
And again, he went from fullback to centre before he got injured.
hmm
And for me, I think he needs to just, because if he's not 100% fit um, to play fullback, then I think he'd still be, if he's fit enough, he'll still be able to do a job at centre.
yeah.
So
I'd
for
say
me,
so.
he
Yeah,
has to be centre.
yeah,
If they're going to play him, then he has to be centre.
yeah, definitely. But like you said, does that disrupt others? Obviously, Jake Mamo's been on form at the moment. Obviously, you can't replace Toby King because he's the on form centre. Like honestly, obviously he's a great player, absolute legend. But in my opinion, and this is nothing against him, and this is to go with any player. You don't want to force a player in the squad if that squad is playing well, just because of their name and just because he's a big name.
I think obviously Mamo is playing well.
Yeah,
However, he's also been playing well on the wing as well.
He
So
has.
he's a bit of a utility back. So for me, if you're going to move anybody, you'd move Mamo to the wing.
Mm.
And as much as obviously Thewlis has been playing well,
Yeah.
again, not talking about the Cass game, but
Hmm.
I think if you are going to move anybody, then you'd potentially move him. Where
Yeah.
does that leave
Yeah.
Tommy Lynham? Obviously,
Exactly.
that's another
Yeah. Yeah.
backup spot as well. But he's been left out since he's come back from suspension. He's not been even in the squad. So unless he's been taught a lesson, or in episode 1, we said it all depends on Powell.
Hmm.
Is he going to be given that time to prove himself for the remainder of his contract? Who
Yeah.
knows?
Honestly, mate. Obviously, I was lost for words then because like he's with our squad. I think it's tough because in the positions I feel we're strongest in, I think we've got too many players, too much top talent. But then in other areas, I think we struggle quite a lot in the selection of players we've got who can maybe make an impact on the game. But it's funny you say that about Tom Lynham because I think we mentioned last episode that he's off contract at the end of the year, and it's up to Powell. But I think there's been a few rumours that if he's not able to make an impact the rest of this year, then he might be off. But we'll see about that. But we'll move on to the Cass game, the most recent game Warrington have played. Brilliant performance, so to say. I will admit, for both of us, we're filming the episode a bit late. So instead of predicting the game, we'll just have a look back on it and reflect on it. Give everyone who's listening our opinions. So a close first half saw Warrington with the lead, and both teams looked evenly matched. But after a stunning hat trick from the hero himself, Gareth Wood, Warrington came out with a convincing rugby league win. For me, I'd say that's the best we've seen Warrington all season and potentially since 2020 or the back end of it, if we're basing it off attacking style of play, which is what Warrington fans want, like we mentioned last episode. I think if we're basing it off all round performance, I'd maybe say both our performances against Catalans are up there as top performances.
Yeah.
But I think definitely attacking wise, we were very good. Obviously, we do have to mention that Cass had a few players out, but I don't think we can take away the fact that even if Cass players were out, Warrington did play good on the day. What do you think, mate? How did the game go?
So I was a little bit concerned in the first 5 minutes because I sat there. Well, where I was stood, it's actually pretty much bang on where the guy is behind your shoulder. I was sat in
Right.
the corner. So when they scored that try, and I was just like, here we go again. But it was more about us and more about our attacking shape. And in the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
the first 6-7 minutes, until we started playing a bit more expansive rugby, it was just one out. And a lot of criticism of aimed at Price's door is that this bloody 5 charge throughs and a kick at the end. There's no creativity. And I was screaming, shouting, miss the man out, like play a cutout ball.
Yeah.
And then what happened? As soon as I'd said that, like play a cutout ball, we went down the left-hand side and
Yeah.
played,
Yeah.
I think it was Ratchet played a nice cutout ball,
Yeah.
and we went in and scored. And I thought, that's more like it.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
as you said, it was a bit of a seesaw first half. Like going back to what we've seen before, Thewlis made a few little mistakes, and it may be
Yeah. He
just
did. Yeah.
time for. He's still young enough. He's a
Yes.
brilliant prospect, fantastic
Yeah.
prospect. But maybe just to take him out the firing line a little bit,
Yeah.
give him a little breather, and keep him hungry.
Yeah.
But that's potentially what I would do and bring Tom Lynham back in.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then obviously, as you say, the second half we were a lot more expansive. Couple of nice tries. Blake Austin looked hungry again.
He did. He did.
He looked like he was running with purpose. And then Gareth, as you said, Gareth Widdop took the game by the scruff of the neck and literally
Yep.
bossed it, really.
He
He
did.
was head and
Yeah.
shoulders the best player on the park. And I'd say all his tries was I mean, his first try he created himself with a nice little run along the line and then cut in. But the other two were nice little plays. And I tell you what I particularly liked as well. I particularly like the link up from both sides between Widdop, Ratchford, on one
Mm.
side and then Blake and Ratchford on the other side. But even on
Yeah.
a few occasions, Blake came over, so you had 3 on one side.
Yeah.
So I like that aspect because it keeps teams guessing. And
Mm.
what did we say in episode 1? The things Warrington became known for were too predictable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as I've said after the Cass game and leading up on the Warrington Wolves fans group on Facebook,
Yeah.
is we need to let the shackles off now,
Mm.
because if we play like we did on Saturday and throw the ball like that, there's too many good players there who can express themselves, and
Yeah.
if they can't express themselves, then I think we'll do well. Granted, we need to take into consideration Castle missing 11 or 12 players,
Mm.
but you can only play, what's in front of you.
Yeah.
They had McShane went off. I think going into the cup game, they should have a few more players back. So that'll be the real test to see where we are against a team like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
overall, mate, against like opposition wise, it was probably, like you say, up there with the performance of
Yeah.
this so
Yeah.
far. The League game, no disrespect to Lee, but they haven't won a game yet, and they sit
Mm.
at the bottom of the table.
Yeah.
We scored more points against them. We scored more points against Hull KR, but I thought that the way we played on Saturday was a bit more, like as you say, a bit more what the fans want to see, a bit more creative
Yeah. I think it was, mate.
after the
And
first 15 minutes.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And you mentioned Austin. He seemed to have a very solid game back in the squad, and it seems as if the Widdop and Austin partnership is starting to click, even if it has taken just over a year. But it's good to see that they're playing well, or they did against Cass, and they seemed very happy in the squad. I'm not sure if you saw the picture that weren't posted on social media with a try celebration. I think they just look really comfortable in attack
Yeah,
together against Cass,
yeah.
which is good, because I think from marquee player, I think that's what we needed from Austin, and I think that'll boost his confidence a lot, because there's no doubt that he's a brilliant player, and on his day he's unplayable, like you mentioned last episode. But I think he was maybe
Yeah.
lacking a bit of confidence, maybe because performances weren't going his way. A few fans were calling for him, which obviously is never nice for any player. But I think now,
Well,
after
yeah.
that performance, I think the whole team will just be hungry to kick on with the rest of the season. And I think if we're lucky, and I'll let you add something, because I know you really want to add something there, I could tell. But I think obviously I think the Huddersfield game was a bit of a blip. But I think we're gonna get our heads down, and I think we're gonna kick on with the rest of the season. Let's fingers crossed. What did you have to add, Carl?
Well, if you looked at it from the Huddersfield and the Cass games, we've played 3 reasonably solid halves of
Mm-hmm.
rugby, and we've had a real mare in one of them, and we've ended up coming away with 2 points.
Yeah.
But when you look at the for and against, we're plus by a bit. Again, instead of looking too much into the league table, what we said before, some of the other games, there's been a couple of shock results. Well, a couple of funny results that's come in. Obviously, Catland, can beat anybody on their day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously, I watched that game that was strong against St Helens.
Yeah. They were.
With let's look at it. They had a few players missing that pulled up
Yeah.
during warm up, so that was a good turnaround for them guys. You
Mm.
look at Salford, our next opponents had
Yeah.
a strong game against Wigan and only went down with a drop goal 3 minutes before time. So there's been a lot of close games, as you've shown. There's been
Yeah.
the game against on what day is it? Monday. On Sunday. Last night was obviously Leeds against Hull. That was a wet game, but that was close.
Yeah.
Couple of odd decisions by the referee.
Yeah.
And I think, like, when you look at the league table now, it's sort of starting to take shape, really, a little bit. That the usual suspects are in the top, 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Huddersfield are now starting to, do good. They won again. So they'll be doing confidence. They're just sitting outside the 6 at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to be for an interesting season. But I agree with you. I think we need to not have these blips. We need to go on and like the Wiggins and the Saints before that game, they need to go on a run now and string, a good few games together before we then start getting full, hopefully, fingers crossed, full stadiums to capacity.
Yeah.
And we can start utilizing our first game, which I think with hopefully full fans in it, will be the league game.
Okay.
That's the first game. Saints is on Thursday night, and I think Lee might be on the Thursday night as well, which is the 24th. That should be, if fingers crossed, if the lockdown restrictions get lifted, we may have more fans. Might not be full, but it might be more.
Yeah, definitely. So you did mention that we'll be playing Salford. I believe it's on Thursday. But quickly, I just want to mention for the Man of Steel, Widdop took all 3 points of Man of Steel against Cass, which is thoroughly deserved.
Yeah.
Steph Ratch with the 2 points, which took his tally to 4 overall, as well as Toby King taking 1, which I believe took his tally to 4 overall. So I think
that's correct. Yeah.
We've had some good performances, team wise and individually this year so far. I think we're still top point scorers, mate, which is always a good sign.
We are bizarrely. We are.
Yeah. Considering,
sorry,
go on.
Considering been. I was going to say considering it's been clunky.
Yeah, that's what I was going
to say the least. I had a chat with someone online about that, and it said, well, we must be doing something right if we're top. I said, if we weren't clunky, we would have had another 50 points on top of that. Easy.
Yeah.
The amount of points that we've bombed. So it's nice being top scorers, but when you look at some of the teams we've played, we've put 50 on one, 40 on another. So there's 90 straight away. But you can only play who's in front of you. So let's see where we are when we played some of the big boys. And make a judgment on that.
I mean, like you said, that's those two teams where we put 50 on KR, 40 odd on Lee. That's 90, but I think we've scored over 200 points already this season. So even though we've had those 2 big scoring games, with an extra 100 or so points on top of that, we're doing something right, like you said. Considering fans are saying that we aren't, up until now we aren't up to scratch. Which is always a good sign. But we'll look at Salford. I think they've had one win this season. Richard Marshall hasn't really got off to the start he wanted to with the Salford boys. Polly is suspended for our game, I think. And so far there are no further Warrington injuries apart from obviously Greg Inglis. We're not too sure how long he'll be out for. Carl, how do you see this Salford game panning out?
Oh, well, we haven't beaten them officially. I know we got the points last season because they forfeited the game, but we haven't beaten them in 5 or 6 outings.
It's been a while.
So we owe them one. We absolutely owe them one.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't take anything for granted, even though they're sitting near the bottom of the table with 1 win. I've watched them a few times and they've been close games. They've been unlucky. Much improved performance against Wigan at the weekend, who again Wigan haven't really been setting the world on fire, but they find themselves top of the table. So so I personally think I think it'll be tight. I think Paulie being out suspended is a boost to ourselves, because when he comes off the bench, he's a bit of a wrecking ball, isn't he?
Yes,
he's everything that Sitter should be. Really. But so he can cause damage. So luckily he's suspended. I'm not sure if. I think Daniel Sargentson might still be out. I think he got a 3-match ban last time.
Right. Okay.
So I think he's served 1 or 2 of the games, so he should potentially still be out. But like you say, no more further injuries at the moment for ourselves. But going to the game, I think it'll be close. But I think we'll probably just we'll just edge it based on the confidence that we'll take from Saturday's game.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And I'll throw a quick prediction out there. It's not a proper one, but I think if we play like we did against Cass, I think we'll get 30 past them. No disrespect to Salford, because like you said, they've played well this year. But I think, like you said, if we carry that confidence on from Cass, who doubt, if there's a few doubts here and there from a few fans across the pond, but I'd say Cass are a top team, a top six team at least this year.
Yeah,
Um, so the confidence from beating a quite a big team, who beat us first game of the season, I think that'll give us a bit of a boost. And I think if we play a nice attacking style of rugby, I do think we'll put a few past Salford. But they won't be easy, mate. I tell you that,
no,
because on their day they're good. They're a very good
yeah,
team.
they've got some seasoned pros, and I think Um, you saying that we'll put 30 on them. I'm gonna say that it's I'm not sure what the weather forecast is looking like. I think it might actually be relatively dry on Thursday.
Hmm.
But it depends if it's a wet game or not. But I think I'll go both teams to score less than 30.
Really?
Yeah, I think both teams will
Right.
score less than 30. I think Warrington will score something along the lines of between 22 and 26 points I'm going
Yeah.
for. I'll
Yeah.
narrow it
Fair
right
enough.
down to that. And I
Yeah.
think if Warrington's defence can start showing up again like it has done, then we should be able to restrict them to, I'd say, 16 to
Yeah.
18 potential points.
Yeah.
What I will say is, though, is it's going to be the first game Warrington are playing in front of fans away from home.
Away. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I think the Huddersfield game was, I seen all the smiles on their faces in when they ran out of the pitch, thing, oh,
Yeah.
buzzing.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
fans are back, which we were all buzzing. But I think that contributed to a bit of a rabbit in the headlights
It could. Yeah. Yeah.
thing. So the fact that we're away from home now, Salford have played against Wigan at home the first game. It's a local derby.
Mm-hmm.
I think Warrington will excel in front of
Right.
fans, but not where there's loads of pressure on them. So I think we'll win. I
Yeah.
think it'll be a close game, and I'll go 28-16 is
Right.
what I'll go.
There we
Um,
go. There we go, mate.
so yeah,
Yeah. It's. I think it's going to be a nice game, and I think it's not going to be a shock, but like you said, it could. Salford fans could play a part in whichever way the game goes, because obviously Warrington have experienced home fans now, as is pretty much every other team, but
yeah,
Warrington haven't experienced away fans, and I think it is one thing rugby players say is a big part. Fans that aren't cheering you on, they get in your head almost. Because
yeah, yeah.
I mean, you've been in the South Stand, mate. When it's a Wigan or Saints, I'm sure it's. If you're a Saints or Wigan player, you're not gonna be you're not gonna be liking the things you're
Yeah, it's
hearing, really, are
volatile.
you?
It can be volatile depending on what's going on, but
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well,
definitely.
so I think like that. I mean, if we look at what's coming as well,
Mhm.
for Warrington after that, we need to just start getting a bit of a run in for the games that are coming in the future, because
Yep.
obviously we're going to start to play the way they've done the season, as we well know. They've bulked all the games in to the back
Yeah.
end of the season
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
should be full stadiums in, and
Yeah.
obviously it's worked well for us because we're playing some of the big sides away with back end of the season. So
Mm.
if we look at Warrington's next couple of fixtures, which we can just quickly run over, we've got obviously Salford on Thursday. We then play obviously the Challenge Cup, which is a huge game at Lee.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting how that goes. Back to the league table, we've got Wakefield at home on the 11th of June, and then the big one is Saints away on the 17th.
Mm.
So if you look at the next few fixtures, we've got Salford, Cass in the Cup again, which we could be such on a high if we get to the final to then take on Wakey
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
home,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then Saints, and then it'll be interesting to see um, who wins the game between Saints and Hull.
Yeah. It will.
But
It will.
so quickly, if we look at the fixtures
Mhm.
for the next round of games.
Yeah, I'll throw
We've
that up
obviously
now.
got so there it is on the screen. We've got Warrington obviously away to Salford. We've got on the Friday night, we've got Cass against Leeds, which will be a top game because that's a derby match. In terms of the Yorkshire side. Then we've got another good game, St Helens against Hull, which is again 2 teams in and around us. We've got Catalans Wigan on the Saturday, again 2 teams that are around us. Hull, KR, Lee, and then rounding off the fixtures is Wakefield, Huddersfield. So just quickly touching on them games there, Warrington have got a real chance that if they can pick up a win against Salford, they can sit with their feet up watching some cracking games this weekend. And teams are going to take points off each other.
They are, yeah.
So, Wigan could lose their first 100% record and be joint top with Catalans, Saints if they beat Hull. Hull could drop points, Saints could drop points or win percentages. Cass could drop points against Leeds because we know that those teams are for. So it's an interesting set of results, fixtures even for this week. And then if we obviously look at the table, if you just pop that up on the screen.
Yeah.
So we look at that. You've got Wigan still with 100% record sitting top. You've got closely followed by St Helens and Catalan Dragons. After that week, you've then got Warrington sitting there just ahead of Hull on the points scored.
Yeah.
You then got Hull, Cass, Huddersfield have started picking up points. Hull KR dropped down a position. Leeds in 9th, 10th. Wakefield get the first win of the season, who leapfrog Salford in 11th, and then sitting at the bottom at the moment are the Leigh Centurions.
Indeed, mate.
So that brings us now to our special guest.
Indeed, it does.
Interview. But before we bring Nat Wood on the phone, we just got one result from the brain teaser question. The question was, how many points did Warrington win in the 2009 Challenge Cup run? And the answer was Warrington scored 201 points. They conceded 84 points within that run, and they had 117 positive run. And we had a couple of people that came in, so we selected it at random. And just want to say well done to Lisa Morley. We'll be sending you a little Now the Wire podcast badge. I'll get in contact with you, Lisa, and that'll be on its way to you. Then this week's question, before we bring Nat Wood onto the phone, is a Tony Smith, who will be next week's guest, by the way, on the podcast.
Yes.
Watch out for that. Tony Smith managed Warrington for 225 games. His previous percentage of wins at Leeds Rhinos over 134 games was 73. Warrington, he managed us for 225 games. What was his win percentage at Warrington? What was Tony Smith's win percentage at Warrington? And on that cue, I'd like you to welcome our next guest, Steve.
Indeed, mate. So that's it from me and Carl. I hope you enjoy that segment. Obviously, like Carl said, we'll move on and we'll welcome our guest, Nat Wood, onto the show. Big legend. So yeah, I hope you enjoy, and here we go. That's a good episode, and I hope you enjoy this interview. It's an absolute cracker, and that's it from me and Carl. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Now the Wire podcast, a dedicated Warrington Wolves show. Today we are interviewing the man, the myth, the legend. Carl, think you've got something to add?
Yeah, we're interviewing Nathan Wood. How are you, mate?
I'm good, gents. How are you both?
Yeah, good
Not too
talk,
bad, mate. Not too bad.
What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? Just living life, doing my best, looking after my family, and I'm coaching Parramatta under 21s.
Right.
So that's my fun side of things. Outside of normal life. So I'm just doing that. We played yesterday. We got beat by St George. We had a good side last year, but they took them all up to reserve grade. So now we're just playing with the younger blokes, which it makes it a bit tough.
Yeah.
And how do you find that? Like, obviously giving something back to the game with the kids.
I like it, but where I'm coaching, it takes me about an hour to get there.
Mm-hmm.
It actually reminds me of when I used to drive from Wakefield down to Warrington all the time when I was still living in Wakefield. When I first came across to the Wire, I do a lot of traffic, a lot of driving on the motorways. So I often find myself reminiscing and thinking back to my drives down the motorway with Nick Fozzard, Benny Westwood. Who else was there? Oh, big front rower from somewhere. What was his name? Big tough bloke. And we used to have the funniest drives, the best drives ever in your life, just pissing ourselves laughing, just trying to outdo each other. It was so funny.
So what was the music of choice then when you went?
Music of choice was just whatever was current at the time, but we all didn't mind partying, so we all didn't mind a bit of dance music. So
yeah. So obviously
we had a fair club. We had a fair car full of parties in there, so you can imagine the music was pumping.
Definitely, that's good. So obviously you're doing that now. You've obviously got, as you say, you're going to be a father soon. Again, you're obviously are you still doing the gym stuff with your brother?
I'm still doing my hitbox stuff. That's still evolving. We're sort of trying to franchise it into a franchise, a gym franchise. So we're just at the start of doing that.
Good.
But COVID whacked the shit out of my business and everybody else's. Just knocked me on my ass because we couldn't train anybody. So that was fucking shit. We're just trying to recover from that pretty much like most people in the world.
Yeah, agreed. It's back in the UK now. It's the gyms have just literally started to open again now. So I think hopefully finally people can start, as you said, get their lives back together and start the businesses can start booming again. But it's not been ideal.
No, it is what it is. You just got to fix again.
Yeah, exactly. Burp, as the hound says. So obviously, Nathan, born on the 24th of January 1972 in New South Wales. Obviously, when you first started getting into rugby, did you? I know I've heard you speak about it in the past about how passionate you are about your parents and stuff like that. But did you really look up to your dad, Barry?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah,
very much so. Where I grew up from is quite a rough place. Yeah. It was rough back in the day, but to me it wasn't rough. It was just where I grew up, So, and when you talk to people and you say where you're from back then, people go, "Oh, fuck, you come from there." So to me, it was just where I was from. But my dad is a much respected, not only just a footballer, but just a much respected bloke from where we come from, the community we come from, and abroad. So yeah, I always looked up to him. He's still the best bloke I've ever met. So yeah.
And then obviously you went into like how did you obviously looking up to your dad and obviously his past playing career and stuff. What made you fall in love with rugby league?
To be honest with you, I've just been brought up to be really competitive at everything that I've done, and be really passionate about my family and my mates. So blending the two together and just playing sport, watching your dad play footy, you probably, and back then there was, even though we did boxing, we did a lot of other sort of sports. Our main sport was rugby league. So watching my dad play rugby league, I was kicking around a football from as soon as I could walk. So I was always going to be either a footballer or a boxer, because that's what we grew up around, footballers and boxers. So I just think that I was destined to play rugby or be some kind of either a boxer or some kind of an athlete. My dad, even though he was a pisshead when he played football, he was still a real fit bastard. And it was like growing up with a drill sergeant, really, but like a funny drill sergeant. Where he's just a funny bastard, quick-witted, but if you fucked up, pull you straight into line pretty quickly. So he had a presence about him that everybody, I just knew growing up that everyone was weary of my old man or respectful of my old man. So I just grew up the same way, and I was blessed to have that upbringing, you know.
Yeah. And when you obviously started playing in 93-ish, how, you know, for the Balmain Tigers, how did you feel as a youngster coming in that you wanted to conduct yourself?
I pretty much, although I respect my dad immensely, I had my own way about doing things, and by '93, I'd been playing football since I was 4, so I'd sort of figured out my own game. Although my game had changed quite a bit over the years from when I was playing at '93, where I'd just try and make 1,000 tackles and play above my weight, trying to prove that I was willing, you know. And when I look back on it, I think I was stupid because although I still scored a lot of tries as a kid and that, I just used to try and do 100 tackles, you know, and I could have saved myself to do what I was better at, which was running and scoring tries. But you're just trying to make a name for yourself and make sure that people respect you because, you know, when you it's good to play with attackers, but back in the day, if you could tackle and you're a tough cunt, you're a tough bastard, then, you know, you are, everybody showed you a lot more respect, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Then obviously fast forward, 2002, you obviously signed for Wakefield. So how did that come about then, Nat? Because obviously, you know,
So what happened there? Yeah, sorry, mate. Sorry about that. Well, that came about because I was playing for the Warriors and I had a fallout with Daniel Anderson at the Warriors. He's a school teacher. I'm a class clown. So things sort of, while I was playing well at the Warriors, we just clashed to a point where it was just out of hand. And then I had a 3-year contract there. No, sorry. He wanted me to sign for 3 years. I wouldn't sign for 3 years. I signed for 1 because I was broken up with my ex-wife at the time. And I was trying to salvage my family. And I said to him, look, to be honest with you, mate, I'd sign for 3, but I don't want to take advantage of it because, you know, I went over the New Zealand on my own and I thought I'd struggle away from my family, which I did, but I ended up rekindling with my ex-wife and getting us back together. So they moved over there, which made it a lot easier, but me and Dan just clashed. So I had no club at the end of, I think it was 2000, probably 2000, probably
2001, I think it's
2001, yeah. And so I got an offer to go to Wakefield through an ex-coach that coached me as a kid for a side that I played for, Alexandria Rovers, and his name was Mick. Can't remember his last name, and he just contacted me and said, look, Peter Rowe wants you and Troy Slattery to come and play for Wakefield Wildcats in the UK. I had no other contract to go to, and I just said, yeah, okay, sweet. So we went over there, and me and Troy Slattery grew up together, and we played at South in the lower grades together. So I was happy to go over there. He was one of my best mates. So we all went over there, and our families, we had young families, they'd grown up together. So we went over there and just did our best for Wakefield, but they shafted us. They owed us both 10,000 quid.
Wakefield did?
Yeah. And we went there, and I said, they put us up in shit living conditions. They just hadn't stayed solid to what they promised us.
Yeah.
So I went in there and sort of just put them on notice. And look, this isn't suitable. It's not the standard we've signed up for. So you better fix it up, or else, you know, we won't keep playing for you. And they just dicked us around for weeks, but because me and Slats just wanted to make a name for ourselves and show that we're worthy signings, we just busted our ass. And I got 4 or 5 man of the matches in a row, and I said to them, listen, if you fuckers don't pay us the money, I'm pissing off, you know. I said, I'll get a start somewhere else. And they tried to barter with me for the 10,000 quid that they owed us and said, oh, look, if we avoid relegation, we'll give you the 10,000 quid. And I said, you just fucking owe me the 10,000 quid.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a matter of if you don't pay, I'll get a start elsewhere, you know, because I was playing well enough to draw interest. And then and I'm not the sort of bloke to leave a sinking ship. They just shit on us. In the end, it got heated. I got heated, and I went into the boardroom and got heated with them, and just said, "Look, if you want to fuck around, blah blah blah." And anyway, they kept trying to negotiate, and I just rang my dad and said, "Look, you better get me out of here because I'm going to snap." And he ended up touching base with Warrington and got onto Plangy. And Plangy just said straight away, "Fuck yeah, we'll have him for sure." And then they just got the ball rolling and ended up they got me and Benny. So I think in the long run, the Wire did well out of the whole situation.
I was going to say the rest is history in it with with obviously with yourself and obviously what Benny went on to achieve.
What he's achieved.
Yeah, exactly.
Big time.
So how did that?
I don't think you'll ever get another player like Benny ever.
No
way.
I mean, he's one of those ones that the opposition absolutely loathed because he just was one of those like irritating persons that just kept on scratching you and scratching you.
I spoke to him the other day. I spoke to him the other night. He rang me. And me and him are really close. We're like brothers, and we don't have to speak for years. It doesn't matter. We're brothers, he and I. And he was down in the dumps. He rang me and told me what was going on with him. And this is how weird it is. I hadn't seen or spoken to Benny for probably 10 months. And I had a dream about him that night and his daughter.
Wow.
And in the dream, the daughter was asking me to come and help him. She had a school bag. And it was such a weird dream. There was a lot of other weird shit happening, right? And I woke up in the morning and told my partner now, who wasn't in the UK with me. I said, then my mate that'll tell you about it. I had the weirdest dream about him and his daughter. And she's like, "Oh yeah." He rang me that day and was like telling me stuff that was going on with him and his family. And I was like, "Fuck." I said, "Benny, this is so weird because I had this dream last night. And I haven't met the youngest daughter."
Yeah.
And I said, "Mate, in the dream, I don't know how old she is." I said, "She's about 10. He goes, "Yeah, that's how old she is." I said, "Wow." I said, "She had a school bag." And it's just freaky how I'm a bit of a spiritual bloke. Just that sort of stuff was weird to me because I've, dreaming about Benny and his daughter, and then he rings me and tells me about him and his daughter and what's going on with his family. So I've really got a soft spot in my heart for Benny. I love the bloke and I'd do anything for him. But
I'm going to try and get him over to the UK then.
I was going to come over and fight in that fundraiser for Rob Burrow and Moss. I'm going to fight. What's the guy's name? He was supposed to be a mad fucker.
Rugby player.
No. He played for Warrington.
Right.
Wow, Kiwi guy. Who's before me, really rough. Played with Breezy.
Oh, we've had a few of them, haven't we?
Trying to think. So you were going to fight someone, but obviously COVID hit it then.
I was going to fight him. Yeah, and it was billed to be the maddest fight on the card. It was going to be a big fight event. And what's the guy's name? He played for New Zealand. He tried to rip Wally Lewis's head off from that.
Oh, let me have a look.
What's his name?
But
it'll come anyway. I was supposed to fight him.
So
Breezy said that he and I were the roughest players he played with. So I think it was any indication who this player was. He played for Warrington with Breezy. Yeah. He's a back rower.
I think I know who you mean. Yeah. So obviously, that discovered it in terms of obviously any future plans. I know obviously you've got the little one due to come, but once the little one's born, do you think you'd come back over?
Well, look, I had aspiration to get back into coaching and doing this with Parramatta. We would have went close to winning the comp last year, but COVID stuffed us, which gets you a lot of credibility if you're coaching an under-21 side or just a side that wins a comp.
Yeah.
And everyone used to say to me, "Oh, would you go back and coach Warrington?" And I said, I would have loved to have stayed and helped coach Warrington before I left. But I don't know about now to come out. It would be nice to be coaching, but I just don't think anything would happen again.
Yeah. So obviously, you're now doing some of the coaching. You finished your career at Warrington at 2000 and 2005. So how did you come to that decision? In terms of obviously that was it, you weren't going to play on anymore, and and sort of what give you the motivation to do what you did next?
The motivation to do what I did was that Warrington didn't want me.
Yeah. And how did that make you feel, considering, you know, you spent the majority of your career, you know, those few years at Warrington, and there was probably your best times. How did that make you feel?
I was shattered because I still had a good season left in me.
Yeah.
Just because the way I was still nearly top try scorer before we finished and stuff like that, still playing good footy. So I said to him, well, even if you don't start me, I'll probably do more damage off the bench coming on to a side that are tired, you know?
Yeah.
And they just decided, Cullen and the powers that be had just decided that it was time to find a younger Natty Wood. So they found Sullivan to replace me, you know?
Mike Sullivan, was it?
Mike Sullivan, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't really do a great deal, though, did he, to be fair?
I don't know. Once I finished football, I just didn't even watch it because I watched one game and I got that down in the dumps.
Yeah.
And I couldn't watch it again. So I just stopped watching football.
How long did that take you to get out of that slump then? Because
2 years. 2 years to start watching footy again. And then 2 years to start playing footy again. After 2 years, I took up captain coaching the side over here. And I did that for 2 years. And I was in the wilderness for a long time. Long time. Probably 8 to 10 years. I think a lot of players get like that where they're just lost and they're just you're trying to find the applause, you're trying to find the pats on the back, you're trying to find the thrill. And the things that you find to take away what you're losing or what you haven't got anymore can bring you undone.
Absolutely. And my final question before I'll pass you over to Stephen then, in terms of obviously what you've just said then about looking for that clap, looking for that praise, looking for that get up and go, how do you think you would fare now as a player where there's probably an element of a lot more support and mental health support now? How do you think you'd cope like now as a player than you did then? You'd probably still be alive. You'd probably still be a live wire.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I don't think I would have reached out for that help.
Yeah.
Okay.
Either way, it's just not my nature to do that. So, whilst there is a lot of, this might sound, I don't know how to explain this, because I'm coaching these kids now. They are all so mentally soft, and they're kid gloved, and they're just wrapped in cotton wool. And it does them no favours in the real world, you know.
Yeah,
it's not reality. They get mothered.
I mean, it's the snowflakes thing, isn't it? The best terminology of it.
Yeah, it's just, and they wonder why that they're all struggling so bad with it. Like, you have to be so careful what you say in front of a bloke. Where when we played, I was ruthless in what I'd say to my opposition and my teammates, and it was just win at all costs. And it's a completely different animal, the young blokes today, and and some of it is a good thing because the blokes of my era and the era before us were just ruthless. Where here, I think the problem with society is, and the mental health side of things, it's important, but there's also a side of things where you've got to show tough love. You've got to feel a bit of hardship and know how to deal with it, because we're just creating a really soft society where people are turning to drugs and prescription drugs because they're depressed about one thing or another. It's just life. It's about dusting yourself off and having a crack, you know. So I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it as an old school.
I agree. I agree on that sentiment, and obviously there's a lot of years between me and you, and obviously Stephen, and he's probably at that era now where you've described what they are like. Whereas, especially when I was growing up, and obviously with you, Nat, it was more of, you could go out and play and mess about as young kids, and now you're like, you're worrying about people like knife crime or whatever that may be. You're worrying about things like that. Instead of when you were playing, you just went out and done your own shit and just cracked on and got on with it. So
a lot of them worry about how many likes they get more than how much they like themselves.
Exactly. Definitely, I agree.
definitely.
So over to you, Stephen. I know you've got a couple of questions you want to
I
ask.
do.
Nat.
Yeah, so obviously you're a bit before my time. You retired just before I was born, actually. But I do have to ask. Everyone knows it. It's the famous celebration when you scored against the Pies. Was that planned out, or was it just something that happened in the heat of the moment?
So I'll tell you what happened. Before I came over to play in the UK, I saw a thing on Wide World of Sport about Breezy.
Okay,
It was a story on Breezy. He was a young kid. He was about your age.
right.
And he just started with the wire. And I was sitting in a pub watching it, and I've got a lot of intuition. I don't know how you explain it. And I was looking and I thought, I'm going to meet this bloke one day. I'm going to play footy with this bloke one day. I reckon I'm going to get on with him.
Right.
And then sure enough, I ended up coming to Hawaii and I met Breezy. He was the first bloke. I went and signed. He was the first bloke. I started speaking to him and he said, do you play pool, snooker? And I said, yeah, I can play pool. And he goes, come with me, we'll go play pool. And so I just signed. We went across to the snooker hall that used to be at Wilderspool. You wouldn't know it, but Carl probably know it. Went across there, and Breezy was talking it up how good he could play. And I was like, all right. So I had a couple of pints, and I beat him 7-0.
Right.
And he's like, I've never been beat 7-0. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I said, mate, get used to it. And he was like, oh, yeah. I said, yeah, fucking oath, get used to it. And he goes, okay, sweet. So that started the bond between us and the competition between us. So we'd always try and outdo each other.
Yeah.
We played someone probably 3 or 4 weeks beforehand. He scored a try and jumped the fence and clapped himself.
Right.
Do you remember? You can see it.
Yeah.
And everyone was sucking his ass. No one over and said, yeah, good try. I said, I beat you. And he went, what? I said, I beat your celebration. And he's like, no way. I said, okay, we'll see. So when I scored that hat trick and I ran through the stand, that was just to beat him.
Absolutely classic, mate. Absolutely. So you did say that you've played amongst some brilliant players such as Brazy and Harves, as well as Andrew Johns when he made his debut. But I can't go without asking, it's the big Leeds match, Andrew Johns' debut. What was that game like, and the atmosphere at the HJ?
Pardon me. It was a great game. The atmosphere was electric, as you can see if you look at it, the footage of that.
Yeah. That
night it was massive. For me, it was going to be my last home game. So
okay.
For me, I knew that I'd be emotional. I'm emotional at the best of times. That's just how I am.
Yeah.
So I was, not that I was nervous. I was sad, not nervous. I was just sad knowing that it had come to an end, and I still knew I had more in me, and I knew that I wasn't going to get a start back in Australia. I wasn't even pushing to get a start back. Oh, actually, I was. I had an offer to go to South, and then it fell through, and I was just like, you know what, I'll just do my best and go and start a business. So for me, it was sad, and to be saying goodbye to players that I loved, that were like my brothers, and saying goodbye to fans that I loved, and the whole football life that had been part of my life since I was 4 was sad, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously you're an Aussie bloke, as you can tell, and obviously you've played rugby league in Australia and in the UK. At the moment, UK fans and Australia fans say there's quite a noticeable skill gap between both professional leagues, the Super League and the NRL. Did you notice that skill gap when you came over to play in the UK? Yeah,
I noticed it. The only sides that I could have compared to the NRL were the top 4. You know, Bradford, Saints, Leeds, St Helens. But the other sides, like let's say there's 13 blokes on the side. When you play in the NRL, there's probably 10 of the blokes on the field that are guns, you know. When I first went to Super League, there was lucky to be 5 guns on the field, you know, in the lesser teams, you know, where there might have been 7 or 8 in the top sides, you know. So if that makes sense how I'm explaining it to you, you know, there was a lot of so-so players to pick out and run at and exploit.
Okay.
But it's horses for courses too, you know. I play. Andrew Johns come over and was like, fucking hell, Natty, how fast is it? how fast. And I was like, really? He's like, man, it's so much faster than back home because it wasn't as high impact as back home and as uniform and just bang, bang, bang. It's a lot more free flowing and a lot of players can't handle the free flowing style of the Super League. I was just lucky for me that by then I'd changed my game to the point where my running game was probably my biggest asset.
Yeah, definitely.
And what would you say now then? Obviously, that was then, not when you were playing then. What would you say? Obviously, this you can obviously tell there's still a gap, but do you think that the gap's closed, or do you think there's more teams in the top four now that could compete in the NRL?
Look, to be honest with you, I haven't watched that much of the Super League footy.
Yeah.
I used to watch it, but I haven't watched that much of it for a long time. I see bits and pieces of it, or if I look on on Instagram or Facebook, I see highlights and tries that have been scored, and I just think it's pretty similar to how it was when I was there.
Yeah.
And like they're all great athletes, and I wouldn't. Don't get me wrong, I don't take nothing away from any of the current athletes that are playing the game. They're all superb, and I wish them all the best at what they do. But I couldn't see a great deal of difference, between, or I can't see the distance closing.
Yeah.
That much between Super League and NRL, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree, mate. So obviously at Warrington, and obviously your rugby league career, you're known as a prankster after your time with old rugby league. But which player pulled the best prank on you, and what was it?
No one has. It'd be like Papua New Guinea declaring war on Russia.
Okay.
No one has ever really got me back. Like they try and do little things or just give you a scare, but no one's done anything solid. Like if someone broke in my house and scared me, they're gone. I would just get them every Friday night.
Yeah.
I think it's just different with me. I get away with a lot more than most people.
What's your best prank then that you pulled on someone then?
Oh, I've pulled so many. Like I used to love breaking in their house and hiding under their bed or hiding in the cupboard, or just breaking in their house and hanging upstairs while they're all watching TV and just running down the stairs with a blanket around me, and just jumping on it. There's so many things that I used to do, and when I look back on it now, if anyone did that now, you'd probably get arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you carried that tradition back over to Oz? Have you been pranking many others?
You know what? I haven't been pranking that many people. I've been scaring quite a few people. I love a good scare. I scared a couple of people. I scared a guy in J-Car, which is like an electronics shop. I scared a guy in J-Car.
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah, you said you were going to get chucked out.
Yeah, I went in there and got him to make me something. They just started talking shit with each other about Dungeons and Dragons or whatever those blokes talk about. And I was standing there waiting for him to do something. I thought, fuck, I'm just going to get this bloke when he had to plug the battery into the power socket. And I got him, and he just, oh, really? Really? I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So I still get a few people, but I don't take it to the extreme that I wish I could.
Definitely.
And is there any, I suppose, obviously with your coaching now, not over in Australia, is there any people that you could tee Warrington up for, who could come over here before going back over to the NRL? Is there anybody that you've seen that you think they're going to be a real player?
The kid that I said would be he was the best player in our side last year is a kid called Jake Arthur, who's Brad Arthur, the Parramatta's coach. That's his son. He had his first grade debut today, and he killed it. Nice. So he would have been. He's going to be a really good player. He's got great timing. He's got a great kicking game, passing game, and a good temperament. He's going to be a big halfback. He'll be like a 6'2", 90-kilo halfback.
Right.
But he'd be someone that if he had some English heritage or something in him, and you could get him to a side, I'd just get him now and say, come over here, because if he went to the Super League, he'll in 3 or 4 years' time, he'll kill Super League. By the time he's 30, he'll be unstoppable. So he'd be someone that if I was Simon Moran and I just wanted to get someone early, I'd offer to sign. But Parramatta, they don't let good halfbacks are so hard to find. A good
course,
halfback's
yeah.
like finding a baby seagull. You never see them.
Yeah, fair enough.
So we've got.
Sorry, go on,
Go on. So I was going to say, have you got one?
Yeah, I was
more?
going to say my last question. You've played over 200 games total in your rugby league career. You've had brilliant moments like that try celebration against the Pies, Andrew John's debut when the Hallowell Jones was packed. Is there a game that stands out a bit more than the rest?
The thing that stands out most for me was when my two older boys walked out with me when I was captain.
Yeah.
At Wilderspool. They walked out on the field with me before the game, and that was the most special moment for me, where I had both my boys in front of me before the start of the game. That was like I pretended that I was my dad and how my dad would have felt with me and my brother. So for me, that was the most special part, and I've had many, but just to have my two boys come out on the field, and it's something they never forget. My two boys speak that highly of me to their mates and my career in the UK. And it's nice. It's really nice.
Yeah, definitely, mate.
Brilliant.
And actually, I've just thought of it. So obviously, one last question. You, Carl, and you mentioned before that you're into boxing. Could we potentially see a Nat Wood versus Carl boxing match over in the UK?
No chance.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, maybe when he's 71 or something like that, I'll try that.
Maybe.
Well, I'm
maybe.
50 next year. You haven't got that long to wait.
Yeah. Great. Well, listen, Nat, we really, really appreciate you coming on the podcast and doing being the first guest on you. We'll obviously let you have a listen back. We'll send you back over soon. We'll hopefully get it edited and sent out. But we know what you've what you've meant to the Warrington fans, that there's still, a lot of people still talk about you now, and the fact that I know you've got a lot of Warrington fans on your social media. So we just want to say, thanks very much for doing it.
Yeah.
Cheers, brother. All the best. I hope you are a success with it. Well done. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Nat.
mate.
All the
Have
best,
a good
mate.
one.
Yeah, boys.
Bye.
Peace out, bye.